The crimson sun of Xerion Prime cast long shadows across the crystalline mountains as Vexthera circled her nest one final time. Her massive wings, each spanning nearly 40 meters, caught the dying light as scales that had once gleamed like polished obsidian now bore the scars of countless battles. The ancient dragon's golden eyes, older than most civilizations, gazed down at the precious cargo nestled within the heated alcove she had carved from solid stone. Her hatchling, barely 3 cycles old, was no larger than a human child. Unlike her mother's dark magnificence, little Zephyra's scales shimmered with an opalescent quality that shifted between deep purple and silver. The youngling slept peacefully, unaware that this might be their last night together. Vexthera's keen hearing picked up the distant hum of approaching ships. The Corvani collective had found them again. For 17 rotations, she had led them on a chase across 3 star systems, always staying one step ahead of their relentless pursuit. But exhaustion was taking its toll. Even dragons, apex predators of a dozen worlds, had their limits. The ships appeared as pinpricks of light against the darkening sky, their formation tight and purposeful. Vexthera counted at least 30 vessels, more than she had ever faced at once. Her lips pulled back in a snarl, revealing teeth the size of ancient tree trunks. They wanted her hatchling for their genetic experiments, to unlock the secrets of draconic longevity and power. She would die before allowing such a fate. With careful precision, she gathered Zephyra in her massive claws, feeling the warm pulse of the youngling's dual hearts against her scales. The hatchling stirred but did not wake, trusting completely in her mother's protection. That trust was both Vexthera's greatest strength and her most painful burden. The lead ship, a sleek Predator-class destroyer, descended through the atmosphere with practiced ease. Through its transparent aluminum viewports, Vexthera could see the elongated forms of the Corvani. Tall, thin beings with 4 arms and skin like polished metal, they were known throughout the galaxy for their cold efficiency and complete lack of empathy. To them, every living thing was merely a resource to be catalogued and exploited. Captain Zextol stood on the bridge of the destroyer, his silver eyes fixed on the massive dragon below. As the collective's premier xenobiologist, he had studied dozens of species, but none fascinated him more than the ancient dragons of the Outer Rim. Their cellular structure defied conventional understanding, their lifespans measured in millennia, their cognitive abilities rivaling the galaxy's greatest minds. Target acquired, his tactical officer reported in the Corvani's clicking language. 1 adult female, approximately 800 cycles old based on scale patterns. 1 juvenile, estimated 3 cycles. Excellent, Zextol replied, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a hunter who had cornered his prey. Deploy the neural dampening field. We want them alive and intact for study. Below, Vexthera felt the familiar tingle that preceded the activation of Corvani suppression technology. The neural dampening field was designed to interfere with the bioelectric patterns that allowed dragons to access their more exotic abilities. Her fire breath, her limited telepathy, even her enhanced healing would be severely compromised once the field reached full strength. She had perhaps 3 minutes before the dampening became complete. 3 minutes to make a choice that would haunt her for however long she might survive. The mountain peak where she had made her nest was surrounded by deep chasms and treacherous cliff faces. A fall from this height would be fatal even for a dragon, especially a young one. But there were caves below, hidden passages that led deep into the planet's crust. If Zephyra could survive the initial descent, if she could find shelter. Vexthera's ancient mind raced through possibilities, each one ending in tragedy. She could not flee with her hatchling, not against such numbers. She could not fight effectively while protecting Zephyra. But, perhaps, if she created enough of a distraction, if she drew their attention completely to herself. The neural dampening field reached quarter strength, and Vexthera felt her flame chambers begin to cool. Soon she would be reduced to claws and teeth, still formidable but not against modern weapons. The Corvani ships formed a perfect circle around the mountain peak, their weapons trained on her massive form. This is Captain Zextol of the Corvani Collective, a voice echoed from external speakers. Surrender the juvenile, and your death will be swift and painless. Resist, and we will take it anyway after subjecting you to extensive neural extraction. Vexthera's response was a roar that shattered crystal formations across the mountain and sent several of the smaller ships reeling from the acoustic impact. The sound carried her rage, her defiance, and her absolute refusal to submit. She spread her wings wide, blocking the ship's view of her nest, and began to breathe fire in a continuous stream that turned the air itself into a weapon. The neural dampening field was affecting her flame, reducing its temperature and range, but it was still hot enough to melt steel. Several ships were forced to retreat as their hull plating began to glow red. Increase field strength to maximum, Zextal ordered. Deploy the restraint drones. Dozens of small, spider-like robots descended from the ships, each one equipped with microfusion torches and quantum entanglement nets. They moved with mechanical precision, coordinating their assault to overwhelm even a dragon's defenses. Vexthera fought with the fury of a mother protecting her young. Her claws swept through the air, destroying drones by the handful. Her tail became a whip that could shatter reinforced hull plating. But, for every drone she destroyed, 2 more took its place. The quantum nets began to settle over her wings, their energy fields interfering with her flight muscles. She felt herself growing heavy, earthbound. The neural dampening field reached full strength, and her flame guttered out entirely. Still, she fought. Even grounded, even stripped of her mystical abilities, Vexthera was 800 cycles of accumulated wisdom and battle experience. She used the mountain itself as a weapon, striking the stone with such force that avalanches cascaded down on the attacking ships. But it was not enough. The nets multiplied, binding her limbs. Energy weapons fired precisely calibrated bursts that caused pain without permanent damage. The Corvani wanted their specimen intact. As the restraints tightened around her, Vexthera made her choice. With the last of her strength, she turned to her nest and spoke in the ancient tongue of dragons, words that had not been heard in the galaxy for 1,000 cycles. Little flame, she whispered to her sleeping hatchling, forgive me for what I must do. Forgive me for not being strong enough. She gathered Zephyra in her jaws, gentle despite her desperation, and flung her tiny form toward the deepest chasm. It was a terrible gamble, but dragon hatchlings were remarkably resilient. If Zephyra survived the fall, if she found shelter in the caves below, she might live long enough for rescue to arrive. If rescue ever came. Captain Zextal watched the small form disappear into the darkness below and immediately dispatched a recovery team. Track that juvenile, he commanded. I want it found and retrieved within the hour. Vexthera collapsed as the last of her strength left her. The quantum nets held her fast, and sedative darts began to find their mark between her scales. As consciousness faded, she heard the Corvani discussing her fate with clinical detachment. Excellent specimen, Zextal was saying. We'll begin neural mapping as soon as we reach the laboratory ship. The juvenile's DNA will provide fascinating comparisons once we locate it. Deep in the chasm below, Zephyra's small form tumbled through darkness, her instincts finally awakening her from sleep. She spread her tiny wings, not large enough to fly but sufficient to slow her descent. Her draconic heritage protected her from impacts that would have killed most creatures, but she was still badly injured when she finally came to rest on a ledge of black stone. The young dragon's cries for her mother echoed through the caverns, but no answer came. Above, the lights of the Corvani ships grew distant as they departed with their primary prize. Vexthera was gone, probably forever. Zephyra was alone. For 7 days, the hatchling survived on her own, drinking water that seeped through cracks in the stone and hunting the small creatures that lived in the eternal darkness. Her injuries healed slowly, dragon physiology proving its resilience even in one so young. But she was growing weaker, her small body not designed for such harsh conditions. On the 8th day, she heard new sounds echoing through the caverns. Footsteps, but not the clicking gait of the Corvani. These were heavier, more rhythmic. And, with them came something she had never experienced before, artificial light that didn't burn her eyes. Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Expeditionary Force paused as her helmet sensors picked up an unusual energy signature. Her team was conducting a routine mineral survey of Zirian Prime when the readings began to spike. Dragons were considered mythical by most human scientists, but Sarah had spent enough time on the galactic frontier to keep an open mind. Ma'am, Sergeant Rodriguez called from ahead, you need to see this. Sarah moved through the narrow passage, her suit's lights illuminating the path ahead. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. Huddled against the cavern wall was a creature no larger than a human child, but unmistakably reptilian. Its scales caught the light like jewels, and its large eyes held an intelligence that was almost disturbingly human. "Is that?" Private Williams whispered. "A dragon," Sarah confirmed, her voice filled with wonder. "A juvenile dragon." Zephyra looked up at these strange bipedal creatures with their artificial skins and glowing eyes. They smelled different from the Corvani, carrying scents of metal and ozone rather than the cold emptiness of space. More importantly, they moved with caution rather than aggression. Sarah knelt slowly, removing her helmet to show her face. The gesture was risky in the cavern's uncertain atmosphere, but her readings indicated it was safe for brief exposure. More importantly, she wanted the young dragon to see that she meant no harm. "Hello, little one," she said softly. "Are you hurt?" To her amazement, the dragon tilted its head as if considering her words. Then, in a voice like crystal and bells, it spoke. "Mother gone. Dark ones took mother." The words were in standard galactic, though accented with harmonics no human throat could produce. Sarah felt her heart clench at the pain in that small voice. "We're not the Dark Ones," she assured the hatchling. "We're humans. We're here to help." Zephyra studied these new creatures with the instinctive caution of a predator, despite her youth. But there was something in the female's voice, something warm and genuine that reminded her of her mother's gentleness during quiet moments. "Help," she repeated, the concept foreign but appealing. Sarah nodded slowly. "Help. We can give you food, shelter, safety. Would you like that?" The young dragon considered this offer carefully. Her mother had taught her to be wary of all starfaring species, but these humans seemed different from the stories she had heard. They were smaller than the Corvani, softer in their movements, and their eyes held warmth rather than cold calculation. "Mother taught me," Zephyra said finally, "trust is earned, not given." Sarah smiled despite the gravity of the situation. "Your mother sounds wise. We'll try to earn your trust." What followed was the most delicate first contact situation of Sarah's career. The young dragon was clearly traumatized and alone, but she was also incredibly intelligent and possessed of abilities that defied human understanding. When Zephyra's emotions spiked, the air around her would shimmer with heat. When she was calm, small objects nearby would float gently in the air. Over the course of several hours, Sarah and her team managed to coax Zephyra from the cavern. They offered her food from their emergency rations, which she accepted cautiously. They spoke to her in gentle tones, asking about her mother and the circumstances that had led to her abandonment. The story that emerged filled Sarah with cold rage. The Corvati Collective's practice of kidnapping sentient beings for experimentation was well known to Terran authorities, but they had believed dragons to be extinct. The implications of this discovery were staggering. "We need to contact Fleet Command immediately," Rodriguez said once they had returned to their ship and Zephyra was sleeping in the medical bay. Sarah nodded grimly. "Prep a priority transmission. Tell them we've discovered not only that dragons still exist, but that the Corvani have captured at least one adult specimen." As she watched the young dragon sleep, Sarah made a silent promise. Humanity had its own dark chapters in its history, times when they had failed to protect the innocent. But, here, now, they had a chance to do better. Zephyra would not face the galaxy alone. The Terran ship departed Zirian Prime 3 days later, carrying precious cargo toward the core worlds. In her specially constructed quarters, Zephyra stared out at the stars and wondered if she would ever see her mother again. The humans had been kind, patient, even gentle in their own awkward way. But they were not dragons. They did not understand the songs that stars sang in the deep void, or the way quantum fields felt against scaled skin. They were trying to help, and for that she was grateful, but they were also taking her farther from her home with each passing hour. Still, as she listened to Commander Chen's voice through the intercom, explaining their destination and the protection that awaited her there, Zephyra felt something she had not experienced since her mother's capture: hope. Perhaps these humans, strange as they were, might be the key to her mother's freedom. Perhaps together, they could accomplish what neither species could achieve alone. The stars held no answers, but, for the first time since falling into darkness, Zephyra allowed herself to believe in the possibility of light. The Earth Defense Council chambers buzzed with heated discussion as representatives from a dozen worlds gathered to address what many considered the most significant xenological discovery in human history. Admiral Marcus Kane stood at the central podium, his weathered face grave as he addressed the assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Kane began, his voice carrying the weight of command, "what I'm about to show you will change everything we thought we knew about intelligent life in our galaxy." The holographic display activated, showing the image of Zephyra as she had appeared when first discovered. Gasps echoed through the chamber as delegates witnessed the impossible made real. Dragons, the stuff of ancient human legend, were not only real but possessed intelligence that rivaled any known species. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the Terran Confederation's leading xenobiologist, stepped forward to address the crowd. "The juvenile specimen, who calls herself Zephyra, has demonstrated remarkable cognitive abilities. Her linguistic processing is beyond anything we've encountered, and her understanding of quantum mechanics appears to be intuitive rather than learned." Ambassador Chinwei, representing the outer colonies, leaned forward in his seat. "What about the adult specimen captured by the Corvani?" Admiral Kane's expression darkened. According to Zephyra, her mother, Vexthera, was taken to Corvani Research Station Omega-7. That facility is located in the Void Nebula, heavily defended and nominally outside our territorial jurisdiction. Nominally, emphasized Director Sarah Mitchell of Terran Intelligence. But, given that this constitutes kidnapping of a sentient being, we have grounds for intervention under Galactic Convention protocols. Dr. Harper pulled up additional data on her tablet. There's more at stake here than just one individual, however ancient and intelligent. Zephyra has provided us with information about dragon biology that suggests they may be the key to understanding several cosmic phenomena we've never been able to explain. The hologram shifted to show complex energy patterns. Dragons appear to have evolved a natural ability to manipulate what we call dark energy. They can alter gravitational fields, communicate across interstellar distances, and, according to Zephyra, even influence the flow of time itself in limited ways. Senator Rodriguez from Mars raised her hand. "What are the implications for our own development? Are we talking about technological advancement?" "Potentially," Dr. Harper replied carefully. "But, more importantly, Zephyra has indicated that her mother possesses knowledge about something called the deep paths, ancient routes through space that bypass normal physics. If the Corvani extract this information, they could revolutionize galactic travel," Admiral Kane finished. "And gain a strategic advantage that would make them unstoppable." In the secure medical facility where she was housed, Zephyra pressed her small claws against the transparent aluminum viewing panel. The humans meant well, but their constant observation and testing reminded her uncomfortably of the stories her mother had told about Corvani research methods. She understood their fascination with her abilities, but she was not a specimen to be studied. Commander Sarah Chen had become her primary liaison, the human who seemed to best understand the delicate balance between scientific curiosity and personal dignity. Sarah entered the observation chamber carrying a datapad and, what Zephyra had learned was called coffee, though the bitter liquid held no appeal for draconic tastes. "Good morning, Zephyra," Sarah said, settling into her usual chair. "How are you feeling today?" The young dragon turned from the window, her opalescent scales catching the artificial lighting. "Restless," she replied honestly. "Your people speak of helping my mother, but all they do is talk. Meanwhile, she suffers in Corvani hands." Sarah winced at the accusation, knowing it held more truth than she was comfortable with. "The council is developing a plan. Rescue operations take time to organize properly." "Time my mother may not have," Zephyra countered. "I have tried to reach her through the deep song, but the Corvani dampening fields prevent contact. For all I know, she may already be dead." The pain in the young dragon's voice was unmistakable, and Sarah felt her own protective instincts flare. She had children of her own back on Earth, and the thought of them facing such uncertainty was unbearable. "Tell me about these deep paths your mother knows," Sarah said gently. "The more we understand, the better we can plan her rescue." Zephyra's eyes narrowed slightly. "Is that what this is about? My mother's knowledge?" Sarah met her gaze steadily. "Partly. I won't lie to you about that. But, primarily, it's about doing what's right.
The Corvani have no right to hold your mother prisoner.
The young dragon studied the human for a long moment, her inherited wisdom weighing Sarah's words and finding them genuine. The deep paths are not like your hyperspace routes, she said finally. They exist in the spaces between dimensions, where thought becomes reality and will shapes existence.
Only dragons can navigate them naturally, though the ancient builders of the Nexus Gates could access them artificially. Nexus Gates?
Sarah leaned forward, her interest piqued.
Ruins scattered throughout the galaxy.
Your people call them archaeological anomalies, but they were transportation hubs for a civilization that existed long before any current species achieved sentience.
My people were guardians of sorts.
This was new information, and Sarah struggled to process its implications.
You're saying dragons have been protecting ancient technology?
Protecting and maintaining, Zephyra corrected. The builders created wonders, but they also created weapons capable of unmaking reality itself. When they vanished, someone had to ensure their legacy did not become a curse. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine.
What kind of weapons? Zephyra's young features took on an expression of ancient sorrow.
The kind that could erase entire star systems from existence.
Make them never have existed at all.
My mother holds the codes that keep such devices locked away. The full weight of the situation crashed down on Sarah like an avalanche. If the Corvani extracted that information from Vexthera, they wouldn't just gain strategic advantages in transportation and communication. They would have access to weapons that could reshape the galaxy according to their will.
We have to move faster, Sarah said, activating her communication device. Admiral Kane needs to hear this immediately.
Within hours, the political landscape of the rescue mission had shifted dramatically. What had begun as a humanitarian operation was now classified as a galactic security crisis. Emergency sessions were called, military assets were repositioned, and long-standing treaties were invoked to build a coalition force capable of assaulting a heavily fortified Corvani research facility. But, as the human machinery of war ground into motion, Zephyra made a decision that surprised everyone. She requested a private meeting with Admiral Kane, Commander Chen, and Dr. Harper. When they assembled in the secure conference room, she made a proposal that left them stunned. I want to accompany the rescue mission, she announced without preamble.
Admiral Kane shook his head immediately. Absolutely not.
You're a child, and, more importantly, you're the only dragon we know to be free.
We can't risk losing you.
Zephyra's eyes flashed with inner fire, literally, as small flames danced around her pupils.
I am not a helpless hatchling. My mother trained me in the combat arts of our people.
More importantly, I am the only one who can guide you through Corvani defenses.
How? Dr. Harper asked, her scientific curiosity overriding political caution. Dragons can phase partially out of normal spacetime, Zephyra explained.
It allows us to pass through energy shields and avoid most sensor detection. I could infiltrate the research station while your forces engage their outer defenses.
Sarah felt her protective instincts war with strategic necessity. Even if that's true, the risk is enormous. If something happened to you,
then I would die trying to save my mother, as she nearly died trying to protect me. Zephyra's voice carried a finality that reminded them all of her ancient heritage.
This is not a request. I am telling you what will happen. Admiral Kane studied the young dragon with new respect.
Despite her size and apparent youth, there was steel in her voice that reminded him of veteran soldiers he had served with.
What exactly are you proposing?
Zephyra moved to the holographic display and activated it with a thought, her natural electromagnetic abilities interfacing directly with the ship's systems. The image showed a three-dimensional map of the Void Nebula and the Corvani research station hidden within. Your ships will approach from the outer edge, here, she indicated with a small flame that appeared in the air. This will draw their main defensive fleet away from the station. While they engage you, I will phase shift through their inner barriers and locate my mother.
And, then? Sarah asked. Once I find her, I will use the deep zone to call for extraction.
Your smaller ships will need to be ready to penetrate the station's inner perimeter at that moment. Dr. Harper pulled up tactical analyses on her datapad.
The phase shifting ability you mentioned, we have no data on its limitations. How long can you maintain it? What's the energy cost? Zephra's expression grew uncertain for the first time.
I have never attempted it for extended periods. My training in such techniques was incomplete when the Corvani found us.
The admission hung in the air like a physical weight.
Here was a child, regardless of her species or abilities, proposing to undertake a mission that would challenge experienced Special Forces operators.
Commander Chen spoke carefully. Zephra, I understand your determination to save your mother. But there might be other ways. Ways that don't put you in direct danger. Name one, Zephra challenged. Your people are brave, but you cannot do what I can do. You cannot see through Corvani cloaking fields, cannot phase through their barriers, cannot communicate with my mother directly. Without me, your rescue mission will fail, and she will die. Admiral Kane found himself facing an impossible decision. Every tactical analysis suggested the young dragon was right. Human forces alone would have little chance of successfully infiltrating a Corvani research facility.
But authorizing a child to undertake such a mission violated every principle he held dear. There might be a compromise, Dr. Harper said slowly.
What if we could enhance your natural abilities? Give you technological support that might improve your chances? What did you have in mind? Sarah asked. Neural interface technology.
We've been developing it for our own enhanced soldiers. If we could adapt it for draconic physiology, we could provide real-time tactical support, environmental monitoring, even emergency medical assistance.
Zephra tilted her head, considering the proposal. Your technology interfacing directly with my mind? That seems invasive. Less invasive than Corvani experimentation, Admiral Kane pointed out grimly.
The young dragon was quiet for several long moments, her large eyes distant as she considered options.
Finally, she nodded slowly. I will accept your technological assistance.
But, understand this, I will attempt to reach my mother with or without your approval. The only choice you have is whether to help me or force me to act alone.
Over the following days, the most ambitious rescue operation in human history took shape.
Dr. Harper worked around the clock to adapt neural interface technology for draconic biology, while Admiral Kane assembled a task force that included ships from 7 different human worlds. The mission was designated Operation Dragonfire, and every participant understood that failure could mean the difference between galactic freedom and Corvani domination.
Zephra proved to be a remarkable patient during the interface procedure.
Her natural electromagnetic abilities actually enhanced the connection, allowing for unprecedented integration between organic and artificial systems. When she emerged from the medical bay, a small device behind her left ear was barely visible beneath her scales.
How do you feel?
Dr. Harper asked, monitoring the readouts on her scanner.
Zephra blinked slowly, her eyes momentarily showing strange patterns as the interface calibrated. Different.
I can sense your ship's systems, hear the electromagnetic songs of nearby stars.
It is overwhelming, but manageable.
The interface will allow us to monitor your vital signs during the mission, Sarah explained. More importantly, it will let us coordinate our assault with your infiltration in real time.
Through the neural link, Admiral Kane's voice reached directly into Zephra's mind. Can you hear me clearly?
The sensation was strange but not unpleasant.
Yes.
Your thoughts taste of mettle and determination. Despite the gravity of the situation, Kane found himself smiling.
Good.
Now, let's review the mission parameters one final time. The plan was complex but elegant in its simplicity. The human task force would approach the Void Nebula using conventional routes, making no effort to hide their presence. This would trigger standard Corvani defensive protocols, drawing their fleet away from the research station. During the resulting battle, Zephra would use her phase-shifting abilities to penetrate the station's defenses and locate her mother. The critical moment would come when she found Vexthera. Using the deep song, she would communicate their location to the human extraction team. A specially modified corvette, equipped with dragon-specific life support systems, would punch through the station's weakened defenses and extract both dragons before the Corvani could respond.
At least, that was the theory.
Everyone involved knew that no battle plan survived contact with the enemy unchanged.
One final thing, Zephyra said as the fleet prepared to depart.
If something goes wrong, if I am captured or killed, you must not allow the Corvani to take my mother alive. The words sent a chill through every human present.
Sarah was the first to speak. We're not going to let that happen.
Promise me, Zephyra insisted. Promise that you will not let them extract her knowledge, no matter the cost.
Admiral Kane met her gaze steadily. I promise. But, it won't come to that. We're going to bring both of you home.
As the fleet entered hyperspace, beginning their journey toward the Void Nebula and, whatever awaited them there, Zephyra found herself hoping the Admiral was right. But, deep in her draconic heart, she prepared herself for the possibility that saving her mother might require the ultimate sacrifice. The stars ahead held no guarantees, only the promise of battle and the hope that sometimes, even the smallest flame could light the way through the deepest darkness. The Void Nebula stretched before the human fleet like a wall of living darkness. Swirling clouds of exotic matter obscured normal sensor readings, while gravitational anomalies made navigation treacherous for conventional ships. It was the perfect location for a clandestine research facility, and the Corvani had taken full advantage of the nebula's natural defenses.
Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the TCS Defiance, his flagship and the most advanced vessel in the human fleet.
Around him, officers worked with quiet efficiency as they prepared for what might be the most challenging battle in human space naval history. The neural interface linking him to Zephyra provided a constant stream of tactical data that no human sensor could match. Dragon Senses detect 17 Corvani vessels hidden within the nebula's inner layer, he announced to his tactical team. Configuration suggests 3 battlecruisers, 8 destroyers, and 6 support craft. Commander Torres, his chief tactical officer, grimaced at the display. That's more firepower than our intelligence estimates suggested. They've reinforced the facility since taking the Dragon. Through the neural link, Zephyra's voice whispered directly into Kane's mind. They fear what my mother might do if she breaks free. The additional ships are not just defenders, they are executioners, ready to destroy the station if necessary. Kane felt a chill at the casual way the young dragon discussed her mother's potential death. Are you ready for phase insertion? I am prepared, came the reply, though Kane could sense underlying tension through their connection. Begin your approach. I will commence infiltration once their fleet moves to intercept you. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the nebula's edge with all the subtlety of a hammer blow. Energy signatures blazed across Corvani sensors as 12 human warships announced their presence with active sensor sweeps and weapon systems charging. It was exactly the kind of frontal assault that the Corvani had been expecting. Captain Zextal received the intrusion alert in his laboratory aboard Research Station Omega-7. His silver eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he observed the human force disposition on his tactical display. Crude, predictable, and woefully insufficient for the task they had undertaken. Deploy the defensive fleet, he ordered his communications officer. Standard intercept pattern. These humans will learn the cost of interfering with Corvani research. Behind him, suspended in a crystalline containment field, Vexthera's massive form showed signs of the neural extraction procedures that had been ongoing for weeks. The ancient dragon's scales had lost much of their luster, and her breathing was labored. But her golden eyes still burned with defiant intelligence, watching every movement in the laboratory with predatory focus. Your hatchling's rescuers have arrived, Zextal informed her with clinical detachment. They will die quickly, and, then, we can complete our work without further interruption. Vexthera's response was a low growl that made the containment field flicker. Despite the neural dampening devices attached to her skull, she had not been completely broken. The knowledge Zextal sought remained locked away behind barriers of will and ancient wisdom. Continue the extraction protocol, the Corvani captain ordered his technicians. If these humans wish to die for nothing, we should ensure their sacrifice has meaning. Outside the station, Zephyra felt her mother's pain through the deep zone like physical blows. The neural interface with the human fleet allowed her to track their movements, but her draconic heritage let her sense her mother's agony across impossible distances. Rage built within her small frame, and she struggled to maintain the emotional control necessary for phase shifting. Infiltration commencing, she reported through the neural link, her mental voice tight with controlled fury. The young dragon's form began to shimmer as she accessed abilities that were more instinct than learned skill. Reality became negotiable around her, the boundaries between dimensions blurring as she slipped partially out of normal spacetime. To conventional sensors, she simply vanished.
The sensation of phase shifting was unlike anything Zephyra had experienced before. Colors took on new meanings, distances became subjective, and the laws of physics bent around her will.
She could see the Corvani station ahead like a cancer within the nebula's heart, its metallic surfaces stark against the swirling cosmic gases. Through this shifted perspective, she could also perceive the station's defenses in their true form. Energy shields appeared as geometric patterns of light, sensor nets became visible as gleaming webs, and the patrol routes of security drones traced luminous paths through space. More importantly, she could see the weak points where dimensional stress created gaps in the facility's protection. Approaching outer perimeter, she reported, her voice reaching the human fleet across dimensional barriers that conventional communication could not bridge. Their shields cannot detect phase-shifted matter. Proceeding to structural penetration. Admiral Kane watched the tactical display as the Corvani fleet moved to intercept his ships. The alien vessels emerged from the nebula's concealment like predators emerging from ambush, their formations disciplined and their approach vectors calculated for maximum effectiveness. All ships, engage enemy fleet, Kane commanded. Remember, our job is to keep them busy while our infiltrator completes her mission. The space between the two fleets erupted in brilliant displays of directed energy and exotic matter explosions. Human plasma cannons met Corvani disruptor beams in a deadly dance of destruction, while missile salvos traced glowing paths through the cosmic storm. The TCS Defiance shuddered as enemy fire found its mark, but Kane's attention remained focused on the neural link with Zephyra. Through her enhanced senses, he could see the battle from an entirely different perspective, watching energy patterns flow and shift as the two fleets engaged. Dragon Infiltrator has entered the station, he announced to his bridge crew. Maintain engagement. Do not let the enemy fleet disengage. Inside Research Station Omega-7, Zephyra materialized in a corridor filled with the sterile atmosphere typical of Corvani facilities. Her phase-shifted senses allowed her to perceive the station's layout as a three-dimensional map, with her mother's life force blazing like a beacon through multiple layers of reinforced bulkheads. But, between her and Vexthera lay a maze of security systems, automated defenses, and Corvani personnel. The neural interface with the human fleet provided tactical support, highlighting potential threats and suggesting optimal routes, but ultimately she was alone in enemy territory. Her enhanced hearing picked up the clicking conversation of two Corvani technicians as they moved through a nearby passage. Through the neural interface, the human translation systems provided immediate comprehension of their words. The extraction is proceeding slowly, one was saying. The dragon's mental defenses are more sophisticated than anticipated. Perhaps we should increase the neural disruption field, the other suggested. Captain Zextal has forbidden that. Too much disruption could damage the memories we seek to access. Zephyra felt her rage spike at the casual discussion of her mother's torture. The air around her began to shimmer with heat, threatening to disrupt her phase-shifted state. Through the neural link, Dr. Harper's voice reached her with calming tones. Control your emotions, Zephyra. I'm monitoring your vital signs, and your temperature is spiking dangerously. If you lose phase coherence now. The young dragon forced herself to calm, drawing on meditation techniques her mother had taught her during quiet moments in their hidden nest. The heat aura faded, and her phase shift stabilized. Understood, she replied through the link. Continuing to target location. She moved through the station like a ghost, passing through walls and energy barriers as if they were merely suggestions. The neural interface provided constant updates on her position relative to both her mother and potential escape routes, while her draconic senses revealed details that no human technology could match. The central laboratory was a fortress within a fortress, protected by multiple layers of security and staffed by the Corvani's most skilled xenobiologists. Through a transparent aluminum observation port, Zephyra caught her first glimpse of her mother since their separation. Vexthera hung suspended in a crystalline containment field, her magnificent form reduced to a test subject by Corvani technology. Neural interface cables snaked across her skull like parasitic vines, while monitoring equipment tracked every aspect of her physiology. But what struck Zephyra most was the look in her mother's golden eyes, not defeat, but patient fury. Captain Zextal stood before a bank of displays showing the ongoing neural extraction, his four hands manipulating controls with practiced precision. "The memory barriers are weakening," he announced to his staff. "We should have access to the Nexus Gate protocols within the hour."
Through the neural link, Admiral Kane's voice reached Zephyra with urgency. "Dragon Infiltrator, the enemy fleet is beginning to disengage.
They suspect our true purpose.
You need to move now."
Zephyra studied the laboratory's defenses through her phase-shifted perspective.
The containment field holding her mother was anchored by quantum resonance generators positioned around the chamber's perimeter.
If she could disrupt those generators simultaneously, the field would collapse. But doing so would require her to abandon her phase-shifted state, leaving her vulnerable to the laboratory's security systems. And, even if she succeeded in freeing her mother, Vexthera was weakened by weeks of neural extraction. Could she fight their way clear of the station? "I am going to attempt Mother's liberation," Zephyra announced through the neural link. "Prepare for immediate extraction." Before anyone could respond, she solidified into normal spacetime directly behind one of the quantum resonance generators. Her small claws, enhanced by draconic strength, tore through the device's casing like paper. Sparks flew as critical components failed, and alarms began wailing throughout the laboratory.
"Containment breach," a Corvani technician shouted. "Intruder in the primary lab."
Zephyra moved with the fluid grace of her predatory heritage, destroying the remaining generators before security systems could respond. The containment field flickered and died, and Vexthera crashed to the laboratory floor with earth-shaking impact.
"Mother!" Zephyra cried, abandoning all pretense of stealth.
Vexthera's golden eyes focused on her daughter with an expression of joy mixed with terror.
"Little flame, you should not have come here."
The ancient dragon struggled to rise, her movements hampered by the neural interface cables still attached to her skull. Weeks of extraction procedures had taken their toll, but the sight of her hatchling in danger awakened reserves of strength she had thought exhausted.
Captain Zextal activated emergency protocols as security drones swarmed into the laboratory. "Seal all exits. Do not let the specimens escape."
Vexthera's response was a roar that shattered every piece of glass in the laboratory and sent several Corvani flying. Despite her weakened state, she was still a dragon, still a creature that had ruled the spaces between stars for 800 years.
"The neural dampening field is still active," she gasped to Zephyra. "I cannot access my full abilities." Through the neural link, Dr. Harper's voice provided tactical information. "The dampening generators are located 3 levels down, in the station's central core."
"But, Zephyra, the extraction window is closing. The Corvani fleet will return to defend the station within minutes." Zephyra looked at her mother, seeing the pain and exhaustion that weeks of torture had inflicted, then made a decision that surprised everyone monitoring the neural link.
"Mother, can you still fly?"
"Barely," Vexthera replied, struggling to her feet. "But not far, and not fast."
"Then, we fight our way to the central core," Zephyra announced with grim determination. "If we can destroy the dampening generators, you will regain your abilities. Together, we can destroy this place." Admiral Kane's voice crackled through the neural link with alarm. "Negative, Dragon Infiltrator. The mission is extraction, not destruction. We cannot risk losing you both."
"With respect, Admiral," Zephyra replied, helping her mother tear away the neural interface cables, "my people have a saying, sometimes the greatest mercy is fire." What followed was a running battle through the corridors of Research Station Omega-7 that would become legend in both human and draconic oral traditions. Mother and daughter fought side by side, their natural abilities complementing each other even under the influence of the neural dampening field. Vexthera's massive frame became a living battering ram, smashing through barriers and security stations while her centuries of combat experience guided their advance. Zephyra used her smaller size and phase-shifting abilities to scout ahead and strike at critical systems, her youth and agility compensating for her mother's weakened state. The Corvani threw everything they had at the escaping dragons. Security drones swarmed the corridors like metallic insects, their weapons filling the air with deadly energy. Automated defense turrets tracked their movement with mechanical precision,
while blast doors slammed shut in an attempt to trap them in killing zones. Through it all, the neural link provided constant coordination with the human fleet.
Admiral Kane found himself in the unprecedented position of providing tactical support for a battle occurring inside an enemy facility, using sensor data from the neural interface to guide the dragons through the station's defenses.
Left corridor, 40 meters ahead, he directed. 3 security drones in concealment, standard patrol configuration.
Zephyra phase shifted through the wall, appearing behind the drones as they focused on her mother's approach.
Her claws found critical systems with surgical precision, disabling the mechanical sentries before they could bring their weapons to bear. Level by level, they fought their way down toward the station's central core.
Vexthera's strength began to return as they moved away from the primary extraction equipment, though she remained far from her full power.
The neural dampening field was station-wide, designed to contain even an ancient dragon's abilities.
Core-level access, Zephyra reported through the neural link.
Heavy resistance.
I count 12 combat drones and at least 6 Corvani soldiers.
Can you phase shift past them? Dr. Harper asked.
Not while maintaining contact with Mother.
The dampening field interferes with extended phase manipulation. Admiral Kane studied the tactical situation from his position aboard the Defiance.
The Corvani fleet was beginning to disengage from the battle, several ships already moving to return to the station's defense.
Time was running out. Dragon Infiltrator, we're going to create a distraction. The extraction corvette is beginning its run on the station.
When the outer defenses engage our ship, you'll have a brief window to reach the core. The plan was desperate, but it was also their only chance. The TCS Shadowhawk, a specially modified corvette equipped with Dragon-specific life support, began its high-speed run toward the research station. Its approach triggered automated defense systems throughout the facility, drawing resources away from internal security. Zephyra and Vexthera used the distraction to advance on the core chamber. The neural dampening generators were massive devices, each one the size of a human shuttle and protected by redundant shielding systems.
Destroying them would require more firepower than they could bring to bear.
Unless they used the station's own defenses against itself. Mother, the power conduits, Zephyra said, indicating the massive energy cables that fed the dampening generators.
If we can overload the primary reactor. Vexthera's eyes gleamed with understanding. The entire station will lose power. But, little flame, we may not survive the explosion.
Then, we die together, Zephyra replied simply.
But, at least we die free. What happened next would be debated by military historians for generations.
Using her phase-shifting abilities, Zephyra penetrated the reactor's containment systems and began disrupting the quantum stabilization fields. Meanwhile, Vexthera used her remaining strength to physically damage the power distribution network, creating feedback loops that amplified the reactor's instability.
The neural link with the human fleet provided a countdown to disaster.
Reactor breach imminent, Dr. Harper reported, her voice tight with tension.
30 seconds to cascade failure. Extraction corvette is in position, Admiral Kane announced. Dragons, you need to reach the docking bay now.
But, the station's internal defenses had one final surprise. As the reactor began to overload, Captain Zextal activated an emergency protocol that sealed all internal passages and flooded them with lethal radiation.
The dragons were trapped in the core chamber as their escape routes became death traps.
Mother, Zephyra said quietly, watching the radiation levels spike on her neural interface displays, I am sorry I failed. Vexthera gathered her daughter close, her massive wings providing what protection they could.
You did not fail, little flame. You reminded me what it means to be free.
The reactor reached critical mass, and Research Station Omega-7 vanished in an explosion that could be seen across 3 star systems. With it went the Corvani's research into dragon physiology, their stolen genetic samples, and their dreams of unlocking the secrets of the deep paths. But, in the final moments before the explosion, something unprecedented occurred. As the neural dampening field collapsed and Vexthera regained access to her full abilities, mother and daughter sang the deep song together. Their combined will reached across dimensions, calling upon powers that had slumbered since the galaxy was young. The space around them folded, reality bending to accommodate their desperate need for survival. When the explosion cleared, the dragons were gone, vanished from normal spacetime as if they had never been there at all.
Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the Defiance, staring at the expanding debris field that had once been Research Station Omega-7.
The neural link had gone dead the moment the reactor exploded, leaving him with only questions and the bitter taste of perceived failure. "Sir," Communications Officer Rivera reported, "we're receiving a transmission."
It's not coming from any ship." Kane frowned.
"Source?"
"Unknown, sir. The signal appears to be originating from multiple points simultaneously. It's almost like..."
"Like what, officer?"
"Like it's coming from the fabric of space itself."
The main display activated, showing an image that made Kane's breath catch in his throat.
Vexthera and Zephyra appeared on the screen, their forms somehow more radiant than before.
They stood in what looked like a vast crystalline chamber, with stars visible beyond transparent walls. "Admiral Kane," Vexthera spoke, her voice carrying harmonics that no normal communication system could produce. "We owe your species a debt that can never be fully repaid."
"Where are you?"
Kane asked, though he suspected the answer would be beyond human comprehension. "In a place between places," Zephyra replied, her youthful voice now carrying undertones of ancient wisdom. "The deep paths have accepted us as guardians once again. From here, we can watch over the galaxy and ensure that the ancient weapons remain sealed." Vexthera stepped forward, her golden eyes filled with something that might have been gratitude.
"Humanity has proven itself worthy of trust.
Your species will have our protection, and our friendship, for as long as the stars burn." The transmission began to fade, but Zephyra's voice reached them one final time.
"Thank you for showing me that family is not just about blood.
Sometimes the greatest bonds are forged between the most unlikely allies." And then, they were gone, leaving only the memory of their presence and the knowledge that somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, dragons watched over the galaxy once more. In the years that followed, humanity would discover that their protection was very real. Corvani aggression diminished as their ships began experiencing mysterious malfunctions in human space. Pirates found their vessels disabled by unexplained energy surges. And sometimes, just sometimes, human explorers venturing into the deepest reaches of space would report seeing massive shadows moving between the stars, accompanied by sounds like distant singing. The dragons had returned to their ancient duty, but they would never again walk alone. For in the darkest hour of their greatest need, they had found that the universe contained creatures capable of mercy, courage, and selfless love. And, sometimes, that was enough to change everything.